Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Newsline at noon, shrugging off concerns about the health of Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Kun-hee following his heart surgery, investors are snapping up the company's shares. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is stepping up his campaign to boost Japan's international military presence, with a key panel planning to recommend this week Tokyo's right to collective self-defense. Plus, releasing a video of abducted schoolgirls, Nigeria's Boko Haram proposes to swap them with its detained militants. One Nigerian minister rejects the swap deal, but another official says all options will be explored. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Tuesday, May 13th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Ju.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. We start with the latest on Samsung following the heart attack that hospitalized Lee Kun-hee, the conglomerate's de facto chairman and the man who played a huge role in making Samsung Electronics one of the biggest companies in the world.
The 72-year-old chairman remains in hospital, but his sudden health scare hasn't spooked investors at all. In fact, as our Kim Ji-yeon reports, the company's share price has shot up over the last 2 days.
It's one day after Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Kun-hee was hospitalized. Shares of the tech giant gained the most in 9 months. Shares of the company jumped 4% on Monday, closing the day at around $1,400. As of 11 a.m. local time Tuesday, shares of Samsung Electronics had risen 1.5%. Analysts say Samsung's succession plan played a big part in the gain, as the company has a contingency plan for such events. Lee's son Cheong is likely to inherit Samsung Electronics, the flagship of the group, and other electronics and financial affiliates. Lee's oldest daughter, Lee Boo-jin, will take charge of the hotel construction and heavy chemical industry businesses. Her younger sister, Lee So-yeon, is expected to lead the fashion and media sectors. Chairman of Advanced Capital Partners James Rooney told Arirang that the succession plan should help the group stay globally competitive.
I view the recent changes as being positive. They clearly had Lee Kun-hee's hand involved in them. Therefore, the man who probably knows the most about the Samsung Group was behind the architecture of the changes that have been made. I expect that Samsung today is in probably as good a condition as it could be under the circumstances of its chairman's health challenges.
The succession is also expected to speed up the restructuring of Samsung Group. Samsung Securities Company, Korea's largest brokerage by market value, will sell its entire stake to Samsung Life Insurance Company. Another affiliate information and communication technology provider, Samsung SDS Company, plans to sell shares in Korea this year. Shares of Samsung Life and Samsung C&T Corporation picked up around 4% and 3% on Monday, respectively. Shares of companies that were not led by one of Chairman's heirs dropped by up to 2%. This is not the first time Chairman Lee's failing health had been in the minds of global investors trading Samsung. Lee was hospitalized back in 2008 and again in 2009, but both times shares of Samsung Electronics gained. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Kun-hee is recovering from his heart attack and is currently receiving hypothermia treatment in hospital. The Samsung Medical Center in southern Seoul says Mr. Lee was scheduled to end the treatment this morning, but the doctors decided to continue with it to minimize any possible damage to the 72-year-old's heart and brain. Hypothermia treatment keeps the body at a temperature of between 32 to 34 degrees Celsius to prevent toxic materials from generating in the body. Even after that treatment ends, doctors say they will keep Lee sedated for the time being. He's reportedly in stable condition and breathing on his own. And it's no wonder why Samsung Electronics shares remain strong. The tech giant grabbed a bigger stake of the global tablet PC market in the first quarter of this year. Market research firm Strategy Analytics says Samsung made up 22.6% of the tablet PC market share in the first 3 months. Apple held on to its #1 position with 29% market share, but analysts note a significant drop in Apple's figures, with the company having enjoyed a 40% market share in tablet PCs in the first quarter of last year. Noting that Samsung has been able to expand its presence through diverse product portfolios, the research firm predicted the South Korean firm would continue to narrow the gap with Apple. And moving on, Japan is taking big strides in its push to regain the right to collective self-defense, or the ability to react militarily in certain limited situations. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is expected to hold a press conference on the issue after he receives a report from his security advisory panel later this week. Our Hwang Seong-hee has the details.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe may soon be one step closer to his wish of making his country a greater military power. Japan's state-run broadcaster NHK reported Monday that Abe's Security Advisory Panel will submit a report this week in support of Tokyo's right to collective self-defense. The Japanese leader is expected to hold a press conference when the report is submitted to shore up public support for lifting the self-imposed ban. According to Kyodo News Agency, Japan will exercise the right only when contingencies in surrounding areas, including the Korean peninsula, pose a direct threat to Japan's security. The Abe administration has reportedly drawn up a series of scenarios under which collective self-defense can be exercised, which include a nearby country coming under attack and a conflict in surrounding areas posing a great security threat to Japan. Abe wants to finalize Tokyo's collective self-defense policy within the first half of this year. Meanwhile, Korea and Japan will hold a second round of talks on Thursday on the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry says the two-day talks between Lee Sang-duk, Korea's Director General for Northeast Asian Affairs, and his Japanese counterpart Junichi Ihara will take place in Tokyo as a follow-up to a meeting held last month in Seoul. Lee is expected to reiterate Seoul's demand for an official apology and legal compensation from Japan for the Japanese military's wartime sexual slavery of Korean women. Tokyo claims the issue was resolved through a 1965 treaty when the two countries normalized diplomatic ties. Around 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve the Japanese army in comfort stations in the early 20th century. Hwang Seong-hee, Arirang News.
President Park Geunhye, who is soon expected to apologize to the nation for the government's failure to prevent the recent Seoul ferry disaster, continued discussing related matters with her cabinet on Tuesday, referring to similar discussions she had had with her senior secretaries over the weekend. President Park asked cabinet members for their ideas on laying the groundwork for a national emergency response system. After apologizing directly to the people, the president will give details of a new master plan to bolster national safety and a new ministry to oversee emergency response and management. She's also expected to talk about reforms in public service to uproot irregularities that are blamed for having caused the ferry disaster. Now, the probe into the shadowy family network that owned the ill-fated Seoul ferry has been progressing quite slowly in recent days, as some key people have been refusing to show up for questioning. This stonewalling has prompted the prosecution to get tough. Kwon So-ah has the details.
The weeks-long investigation into the Seoul ferry disaster is struggling to shift into top gear as key figures are refusing to show up for questioning. In order to turn the screw on the no-shows, prosecutors are raising the legal stakes. They have an arrest warrant for Yoo Dae-gyun, the first son of the practical owner of the ferry Yoo Byung-on, who did not appear for questioning on Monday morning. Yoo's second son Yoo Hyuk-gi and two daughters Yoo Seom-na as well as Yoo Sang-na, who are all said to be abroad, have also yet to show up. The Yoo family and its close associates are suspected of being involved in embezzlement and tax evasion, which could have had a direct influence on the ferry sinking. Latest investigations have revealed Yoo Byung-an, the practical owner of the Seoul ferry's operator Chung MongJoon Marine Company, was involved in the management of the ship just 2 months before the accident. That's why the Joint Investigation Headquarters believes Yoo could be the top person in charge and the person most responsible for the disaster. Earlier in the day, prosecutors visited the controversial Guwonpa sect's facility Kumsuwon in Anseong, Gyeonggi-do Province, where Yoo Byung-an, the cult's leader, is thought to be. They, however, failed to talk to him, which prompted them to go ahead with their arrest warrant for Yoo's son. Meanwhile, financial authorities are delving deeper in possible monetary irregularities. The Financial Supervisory Service says it's begun a new probe a couple of days ago on the National Federation of Fisheries Cooperatives and Sinan Capital, which have granted loans to Yoo Byung-an's associates in the past. This comes as financial authorities vowed to look into every loan related to Yoo. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And while the investigations continue, the outpouring of support from the international community over the Seoul Ho ferry tragedy continues. The Korean embassy in the United States says 39 US lawmakers have sent over a book filled with condoling messages for the ferry's victims, families, and also the Korean people. The gesture was orchestrated by Senator Robert Menendez and Congressman Ed Royce. The sentiments in the book echo those made by US President Barack Obama when he visited Seoul last month.
Korea's ruling Saenuri Party has elected billionaire business tycoon turned politician Chung MongJoon to run for Seoul mayor in the June 4th local elections. He will face off against sitting mayor Park Geunhye. Our correspondent Kim Ji-yeon has more.
When voters in Seoul take to the polls next month to cast their ballots for mayor, the name under the Saenuri Party banner will read Chung MongJoon. The 7-term lawmaker and former presidential candidate beat out former Prime Minister Kim Hwang-sik and Supreme Council member Lee Hae-hoon in a primary on Monday at Seoul's Olympic Gymnastics Hall. After earning the nomination, Chung pledged to go out and win come June 4th.
I will fight to win back Seoul's mayoral seat in the upcoming June 4th local elections. I will provide more quality jobs and improve welfare systems for Seoul's citizens. I will work for President Park Geunhye, our Saenuri Party, and for the people who love our country.
The business tycoon, the largest shareholder in Hyundai Heavy Industries, said he had a vision to make Seoul the economic, cultural, and tourism center of East Asia. He also said he wanted to make the capital a more attractive place to live, pointing out that the capital's population has fallen below the 10 million mark this year. Chung was selected through a process that gives the votes of party delegates, party members, and ordinary citizens 80% weight. Opinion polls accounting for 20%. Chung will face off in the race against incumbent Park Geunhye of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy. With the contenders for Seoul mayor decided, Chung and Park are expected to hit the campaign trail next week as they look to secure a 4-year term running the nation's capital. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through our international headlines. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by at the News Center.
Eunice, if the claims are true, we're seeing the Nigerian schoolgirls for the first time since they were abducted last month. Could you tell us more about this video put up by Boko Haram?
Sure thing. And Nigerian authorities are consulting family members trying to confirm the identities of those girls in the video released by Boko Haram. In it, the group's leader says he's willing to swap the girls for imprisoned militants of his group. Here's Shin Se-min with more.
A new video has been released by the leader of Boko Haram, who says he will free the nearly 300 schoolgirls who were kidnapped by the terror group 1 month ago if detained members of his terror group are released from Nigerian prisons. The 27-minute video gives the world its first glimpse of some of the teenage girls who were kidnapped in mid-April from their boarding school in the northern state of Borno. About 136 girls are shown in the video, just under half of the total abducted. They are seen dressed in colorless hijabs, many of them barefoot, citing the first verse of the Quran. Boko Haram leader Abu Bakr Shakau says in the video that the schoolgirls have converted to Islam.
Wallah, billahi alladhi la ilaha illahu, ha'ula'i al-banat, la natrukuhunna, illa ba'da ma taraktum ikhwanana.
Nigeria's interior minister has rejected the offer, but the information ministry said all options would be explored. Local officials have begun distributing the video to families of the victims in an attempt to identify them. The nation is now getting international help in securing their release. The US and UK already have teams on the ground, and an Israeli counterterrorism team is on its way to the country. French President François Hollande also invited European and American officials, along with leaders from Chad, Cameroon, and Niger, to a summit on Saturday that will focus on countering the prolonged Boko Haram threat. The militant group has been engaged in a violent campaign against the Nigerian government since 2009. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Separatists in the eastern regions of Donetsk and nearby Luhansk in Ukraine declared independence after Sunday's referendum vote. They claimed 89% and 96% of voters respectively agreed they wanted self-rule. Now, a leader of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic is appealing to Russia to listen to the will of the people and, quote, absorb it. Ukraine's acting President Alexander Turchinov discounted the polls as nothing more than propaganda, a quote, farce by terrorist separatists. The West have called the referendum illegal. Russia says it expects its results to be implemented in a civilized manner. Meanwhile, the European Union has added 13 more names to its sanctions list, including an aide to the Russian president, as well as 2 Crimea energy companies. Standing alongside his Singaporean counterpart in Washington, Secretary of State John Kerry reiterated U.S.'s concerns about China's recent, quote, challenge to the Paracel Islands. Last week, China had butted heads with Vietnam when a giant Chinese oil rig was placed in an area of the South China Sea also claimed by Hanoi. Kerry called for the creation of a maritime code of conduct to peacefully resolve conflicts, a proposal the Singaporean foreign minister also said he supported. This as Beijing's foreign ministry said Monday the facts showed that Hanoi was trying to position other countries against China, but that the effort would fail. On Sunday, hundreds rallied in Vietnam's major cities in an act of protest against Beijing. And the world's biggest elections have wrapped in India. The marathon general polls began on April 7th and ended this past Monday. 4 major exit polls showed opposition leader Narendra Modi in the lead to be India's next prime minister, and his Bharatiya Janata Party poised to take the parliamentary majority. Official results are set to be released on Friday. India's election commission announced Monday night the 9-phase elections recorded the country's highest voter turnout of over 66%. That's a record 551 million people who cast their votes for India's future.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broom and Jin-ju.
I'm Jin-ju.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics. US President Barack Obama returned 9 ancient seals to Korea during his visit to Seoul last month, more than 60 years after they were illegally taken out of the country.
The public will be able to see these national and royal seals for themselves now, as they will be on display at the National Palace Museum of Korea. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The National Palace Museum of Korea will hold an exhibition displaying the 9 seals that date back to the Joseon Dynasty and the Taean Empire. Among them is the Hwangjae-jibo, the seal of the emperor, which was created upon the establishment of the Taean Empire in 1897 by King Gojong. It embodies his determination for independence. The Sugang Taewang Jebu, another seal that found its way home, was made by King Sunjong to commemorate a 1907 royal right bestowing Emperor Gojong with the title of Great Emperor after his abdication. It's the only seal from the Joseon dynasty in the shape of an octagon.
Seals are usually carved in a square form, but this one is unique as it was designed octagonally.
The Yuseol Jibo and the Chunmyeong Jibo were used for official purposes. The Yuseol Jibo was designed in 1876 and was used in the appointment certificate for public officials, and the Chunmyeong Jibo was used in educational documents. The 5 other signets were used to stamp books or paintings in the royal court of the Joseon dynasty. The seals were illegally transferred from the Toksugung Palace in Seoul during the Korean War. They were seized by U.S. Customs authorities from the family of a deceased Korean War veteran.
At the request of our U.S. government to Homeland Security investigations, we did everything possible to expedite this matter and coincide it with the President's visit.
Fast forward some 60 years and the national treasures are back in Korea where they belong. U.S. Customs authorities have seized 2 more Korean royal seals, but it's expected to take a while to bring them back. Meanwhile, the exhibition will run through August 3rd. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, the greatest threat facing mankind, many scientists will tell you, is climate change, and new evidence suggests it's having a devastating effect on glaciers in Antarctica much faster than previously thought.
Yes, a new NASA report says that spells trouble for all of us, particularly those who live in coastal areas. Connie Lee has this report.
Large glaciers in West Antarctica are melting away, and nothing is likely to stop it. Through a telephone news conference held by NASA on Monday, scientists raised concerns that the irreversible melting is occurring faster than expected, and that the ice in the Amundsen Sea area could raise global sea levels by more than a meter. That's higher than researchers previously anticipated. "We've passed the point of no return," said NASA glaciologist Eric Rigno on NASA's website. He said it's merely a matter of time before the glaciers completely disappear. A consequence of human-induced climate change, scientists say that warm water has been melting the underside of the floating ice at a speed of about 1 kilometer per year. The joint publication by NASA and the University of California, Irvine used satellite data and aircraft studies in the area dating back 40 years. Scientists say that the complete meltdown could take hundreds of years, but the effects of the melting process could be felt this century. A recent climate report by the United Nations predicts that by the year 2100, sea levels could rise from about half a meter to nearly a meter, which can then displace tens of millions of people who live in coastal areas worldwide. Just last week, U.S. President Barack Obama warned that climate change was already happening and not in the distant future. And the latest study is evidence that some of the damage is already irreversible. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Well, it's going to be a hot one today, with temperatures reaching well into mid to upper 20s, and the southeastern city of Daegu will even see a high of 31 degrees Celsius this afternoon, and the whole nation can expect plenty of sunshine throughout the day. So the UV levels will be high to very high in many regions, so don't forget to apply a good amount of sunblock before heading out and stay hydrated. Now tomorrow should be also nice and warm here in Seoul, but temperatures will drop a bit on Thursday with a chance of showers in Gyeonggi-do province. Well, over in Jindo near the Seoul ferry accident site, the winds and waves will be much calmer today. Winds will be blowing in at 5 to 9 meters a second, and the waves will be as high as 1 meter high. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in Seoul will rise to 26, while Daegu peaks at 31, and Gwangju and Busan climbed to 28 and 25 respectively. For other regions, it looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will reach 24 and 28 later in the day. Dokdo should see a high of 25, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 16. Well, that's all for me today, but I'll be back with more updates tomorrow morning.
Well, that's all for now, but our next newscast is coming up at 2 p.m. Korea time.
Mark and I'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Thank you for watching.